Follow TV show brought the wasteland to life in a few new ways, showing some familiar horrors and some we've never seen before. Of course, it wouldn't really be a Fallout adaptation without some sick and twisted Vault experiment, and Vault 4 gave us exactly that. Today we'll be talking about 5 reasons why Vault 4 is Vault-Tech's cruelest experiment. Let's get into it. Reason 1. It sounds good in practice. On paper, Vault 4 doesn't sound like a nightmare. In fact, I think its experiment was built around something that, at least in theory, made sense. It was simple. Fill a vault with some of America's brightest scientific minds, free from bureaucracy or oversight, and let them pursue a project that could potentially safeguard humanity's future. Led by Lloyd and Cassandra Hawthorne, Vault 4 was going to find a way to make humans more resistant to radiation. It wasn't some sick social experiment like Vault 11's cruel sacrifice lottery, or a reckless exposure test like Vault 12's malfunctioning door. Vault 4 was meant to be a controlled environment for research that might actually benefit mankind. But that's what ended up making it so insidious. The Vault put a team of scientists in charge with total freedom, no ethical guardrails of sorts, and definitely little accountability. And so what started as a potentially humanity-saving experiment quickly devolved into something far darker. In the aftermath of the Great War, with no one to question their methods, the scientists began pushing the limits of what radiation-resistant humans could mean. Instead of, say, studying environmental adaptation or medicine, they turned to hybridization. They would lure wastelanders to the vault, turn them into unwitting guinea pigs, and combine their human DNA with that of creatures better suited to survive in irradiated environments. Very disturbing. And I think that's what helps set Vault 4 apart from some of the other vaults in the Fallout universe. Vaults like 106 or 51 were clearly doomed by design. They were essentially traps built to study the suffering of man. Vault 4, however, created its own downfall. It didn't need to be cruel, but it became such. The scientists seemed to truly believe that they were doing something revolutionary, but without ethical limits, they ended up crossing a line. Like Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Reason 2. It started before the Great War. Vault 4 is unusual when it comes to Vault-Tech's many experiments because it didn't begin after the bombs fell. Rather, it began before. In the years leading up to the Great War, the Vault was already fully operational. Its inhabitants, a group of 80 scientists, had voluntarily entered the facility to begin a long-term study on human radiation resistance. In the advertisement for the Vault, Lloyd Hawthorne describes Vault 4 as a closed, 5-year trial run to show how society would function in a vault. It was going to operate before any air raid siren ever rang. The outside world was still intact, normal life was still happening on the surface, and yet these people willingly sealed themselves away from it. And it's that early start that makes Vault 4 stand out. Most vaults were designed to begin their life cycle well after much of the world had already been destroyed, testing what fear, isolation, or scarcity would do to human behavior. Vault 4, on the other hand, didn't wait for the world to end. Instead, they were instructed to live as though it already had. And so, when the bombs eventually did drop, Vault 4 hardly flinched. Their experiment didn't stop, and instead, they simply lost their last remaining connection to accountability. And I think that isolation explains a lot about what came later. By the time the Great War ended, Vault 4 had already been sealed for some time. Over time, that kind of isolation could warp a person's perspective. The longer you're cut off from the outside, the easier it becomes to justify anything, like human experimentation, in the name of progress. So, while most vaults fell apart after the bombs had already fallen, Vault 4, instead, had their own head start to their own demise. Reason 3. Vault 4 is hidden in plain sight. Another reason why I think Vault 4 is so disturbing is that its true nature was never really hidden. From the start, Vault-Tec and the Hawthorns practically told the world what they were doing. In the pre-war commercial that we see, Cooper Howard proudly introduces the Hawthorne family as specialists when it comes to the effects of radiation on human DNA. It's clearly foreshadowing their eventual human experiments, but without hindsight, how would anyone be able to put 2 and 2 together? The Vault was clearly advertised to be some sort of hub of scientific progress, a place where the brightest minds would unlock humanity's future. But even within the commercial itself, we can see a hint at something darker. Near the beginning of Cooper's walk through Vault 4, we can see a door clearly labeled Test Subjects in plain view. Sure, it could be something innocuous, like a room to store rats to experiment on, but it's another bit that foreshadows Vault 4's eventual experiment. And so it seems like Vault 4 didn't bother with tons of secrecy because it didn't need to. Before the Great War, the American public had already grown plenty comfortable with the idea of science and technology being used to reshape humanity. Caretaker robots, wrist-mounted computers, stimpaks. Vault-Tec leaned into that optimism, or naivety, and used it to make their work look noble. The Vault was presented as humanity's next step forward. Everything about it was meant to inspire confidence in their company and the Vault project as a whole. The state-of-the-art facility, the smiling Hawthorns, and the assurance that Vault life would be safe and secure. And then there's the Vault's physical location. Unlike some vaults whose entrances are buried underground or hidden within mountains, Vault 4 is built right out in the open, with its outer structure visible to anyone walking by. It's of course not the only vault to have a not-so-secret main entrance, but it does add to the idea that Vault 4 was truly hidden in plain sight. And so whether it's the language in the ad, the visible signs of experimentation, or the Vault's open placement on the surface, the horror of Vault 4 was right there, simply waiting to be found. Reason 4. It's first-hand horror. Another reason why Vault 4 stands out to me is that, for once, we don't just hear about what went wrong, we actually get to see it. Most Vault experiments in Fallout are long over by the time the player arrives. We're stuck with picking through the remains, reading terminal entries, and piecing together what happened from skeletons and scraps. But with Vault 4, it's different. We actually get a chance to see the horrors of Vault 4 firsthand. While Lucy explores the forbidden level 12, she finds what I'd consider to be the most disturbing thing Fallout has ever shown in the franchise. She comes across a video recording. The video shows a pregnant woman giving birth to a spawn of gulpers, which then promptly devour her. Yeah, I don't really know what else to add here. It's quite shocking. Furthermore, she comes across several cryopods holding pregnant women in suspended stasis. We'll get to this later. It's often rare that Fallout forces the player or viewer to sit with that kind of horror in real time. That's just the nature of the games. Usually we find the aftermath, we interpret, and then we move on. Vault 4 doesn't give us that comfort. Instead, we get to witness the experiment alongside Lucy, and it is genuinely disturbing. Reason number 5, Vault 4 is still experiencing the aftermath centuries later. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Vault 4 is that even after these scientists were overthrown and the test subjects reclaimed the vault, the damage was already done. The horror of Vault 4's human hybridization experiment didn't end after the Hawthorns died. Rather, its effects can still be seen through generations. The people who live there now are proof of that. Many residents of Vault 4 still retain slight genetic mutations from their ancestors. They're of course not monsters like the Gulpers, but they're definitely not your typical human. And then there's the most haunting part of all. the pregnant women still kept in cryostasis. I sort of alluded to it before, but after the revolt, the residents of the vault didn't know what to do with those in the middle of their gulper pregnancies. Birdie explains to Lucy that they're trying to ease the pain of the poor souls that Lucy's people, aka the original vault dwellers, lured into this place. And so they decided to keep them in cryostasis while working on developing a cure for them, some way to safely rid them of the gulpers inside. It's a cruel reminder of how deep the experiment's reach goes. Even after the bad guys are gone, the consequences remain. And that's another reason why Vault 4 is just so despicable to me. The horror didn't stop with the scientists or the uprising. Every child born there, every family that calls it home, still carries the lingering remnants of an experiment that should have never happened. Vault 4 is a wound that never healed. And that wraps up 5 reasons why I think Vault 4 is Fallout's cruelest experiment. From unchecked scientific hubris that let the Hawthorns play God, to the fact that the experiment was hidden in plain sight, every aspect of Vault 4 creates what I believe to be a uniquely horrifying experiment. Even centuries later, Vault 4 proves that the hardest thing to contain isn't radiation or the mutant creatures, rather, it's the hubris of man. That's all from me today, folks. If you liked the video, be sure to share and subscribe. Which Vault experiment is the worst? Join the Discord. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
I mean, one funny joke I told on maybe 10 occasions.
What was the joke?
I forget. All I know is it was a huge bomb.